All right, welcome back to Marine Science. This 2.4 seafloor features. There's not going to be a whole lot to this lecture because most of it is just you defining terms. So some independent work today of just looking up some definitions for seafloor features, sketching them out, make sure that you have an understanding of what these features look like. But there are a couple things that I want to walk you through real quick. First, just a little bit of geologic history. About 180 million years ago, a rift began to form between North America and the combined continents of South America and Africa. They were still together at the time, and a rift began to separate them from Pangaea into two large continents. They were referred to as Laurasia and Gondwana. This rift was the beginning of what is now the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And then also about 180 million years ago, a rift began to split up Gondwana, and the early Indian Ocean began to form as well. About 135 million years ago, a rift between South America and Africa began. As you look on the map, those tend to be the kind of the two most obvious pieces of the puzzle that were clearly joined together at some point. And this rift joined the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in forming what is now the Atlantic Ocean. As the Atlantic Ocean grew, it is still growing, by the way, and the Americas were carried farther away from Eurasia and from Africa, and the Atlantic Ocean continues to grow because of that Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And the Pacific Ocean actually continues to shrink. It's on the other edge of the plates where seafloor is being sucked down into the mantle. Just an image here. You can pause this if you want and take a look at it if you want to see kind of the idea of how they broke apart. All right, so the rest of your 2.4, you really don't need to have written any of that already. But now you can do some writing for continental shelf. You're just defining terms now. For continental shelf, one of the things that we want to make sure you have is this here. That it's the richest area of the ocean in terms of the number of species, and that's because there is light all throughout the continental shelf. That will be on the test. Make sure that you know there is light all throughout the continental shelf. That's going to be the area of the ocean before the slope, before it drops off out into deep ocean. The light can reach the entire shelf, and because of that light, there is plant life. And because of that plant life, there's going to be lots of other life that ends up surrounding it. So then after you get past the continental shelf, you're going to hit the slope. It can be thought of as the edge of the continent. It begins at the end of the shelf and extends to the deep ocean floor. And it's much steeper than the continental shelf. The shelf does have a little bit of slope to it, but then when you hit the actual continental slope, it will be a serious drop off. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want to write here. This is more about being able to identify, not necessarily just having the right definition, but if you were to see an image of an ocean basin, can you identify the shelf? And then can you spot where the continental slope is? And then you'll also, as you define these other terms, you'll want to make sure that you know.
Staff, just want to let you know that they should be ready for pictures in about 5 minutes.
They're taking
8:25.
Taking staff pictures today. That's why it looks so good.
Please remember to bring it. Speeds up the process. Thanks.
All right. So then we have our continental rise. This is just kind of a little bump at the bottom of the slope. It's formed by sediments that have been pushed around down from the continental shelf and the slope. It can be thought of as an underwater kind of river delta, and I'll give you an image here of what it looks like. Here, the continental shelf is here, and then the slope drops down, and at the bottom of the slope, this continental rise is just kind of where sediments collect. Some of it is being washed down the slope from the continental shelf. Other parts of it may be being carried around by currents. There's not a whole lot of water movement down below when we get to this deeper area of the ocean. There is still some. So the sediments collect and kind of create that little continental rise. And I'm going to mention these real quick, but you don't have to write anything for them. So active margins are the sites of a very intense geological activity. This is where a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes and trenches are. They're characterized by steep, rocky shorelines. So if you go somewhere like the northwest coast of the United States, you're in Northern California, or you're in Oregon and Washington, you're going to see these steep, rocky shorelines. Where a passive margin is going to be a pretty inactive place geologically. So it's going to be flat, wide coastal plains with a wide continental shelf and a very gradually sloping slope. We are an example of that. You're not going to find the rocky cliffs and stuff here in Florida. We are on a passive margin. And I think this is the last one here. So most of the deep sea floor is abyssal plain, and this should be on your sheet as well. So the abyssal plain lies at a depth of about 3,000 to 5,000 meters, and the deep sea floor contains low abyssal hills, plateaus, rises, all kinds of stuff on the sea floor. But the flat areas, similar to you go out to Nebraska, and we have our plains there. It's a similar concept. It's a large flat area, and then eventually we do run into some other seafloor features which you are going to define. So you're going to independently look for seamount, guyot, trench, volcanic island, submarine canyon, and atoll. Hopefully those are all on your sheet if I did it correctly. So find a definition for those, sketch them out real quick. Most importantly, make sure that if you were to see a picture of one, you would be able to identify it and say, okay, that's a seamount, that's a guyot, that's an atoll. And make sure that you can tell the difference between these different seafloor features. Have a great day. I'll see y'all later.